Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. It's just 2 p.m. here in New York, so we will wait for another minute or two for everyone to join before we start today's info session. So yeah, just waiting for another minute before we then start. Hello and welcome everyone to today's info session on the Banyan Impact Fellowship Program for Service in India. I'm very excited that you joined today and welcome again. Today's info session is about our fellowship program that is currently accepting applications, and the goal of the session is to provide you some information about the program, its structure, and how to apply. And I'm especially happy and grateful for Jocelyn joining us today. Jocelyn is one of our alumni. She just graduated from the program this year, and she will also talk about her experience today and will also be there for our Q&A session. So a little bit about the structure of the session. I will start with a presentation, shouldn't be more than 5 to 10 minutes, talking a bit about the program and what to keep in mind when applying. Then Jocelyn will talk about her experience as a Banyan Impact Fellow, where she served in India and graduated this year. And then we will open for questions. So I encourage everyone to add their questions in the comment sections, and then we will get to those questions at the end of this session. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and excited to provide you some insights into our program today. So the Banyan Impact Fellowship is the American India Foundation's oldest program, actually. It started in 2001, which is also when the American India Foundation was started. The American India Foundation is committed to improving the lives of India's underprivileged, with a special focus on women, children, and youth. And the fellowship program in particular is about leadership development and about another pillar of the American India Foundation, which is the bridge building between the United States and India. What started as a disaster relief program in 2001 after the earthquake in Gujarat has now become a truly binational fellowship program. We now have fellows both in India and the United States, serving with civil society organizations in both countries. Today's session is about the Service in India program, where fellows today work in various thematic areas. I will talk a bit about those thematic areas in a bit. And over the years since 2001, AIF has actually supported 539 fellows across 238 partner organizations in India. The fellowship program is a fully funded program. It starts in October each year and goes for 10 months. It's a volunteer service program where the main focus areas are in education, livelihoods, and public health. The program brings together fellows from both India and the United States, which is about fostering meaningful connections between fellows from both of these countries and about fostering their leadership skills while serving at the grassroots level in India in different NGOs in the development sector. So fellows, together with their host communities and host organizations, work on sustainable projects that they develop together with their supervisors, with their host organizations, to serve communities on the ground. So the thematic areas, as I mentioned, have expanded over the years. It started with disaster relief in 2001, and nowadays the fellows work in different projects and thematic areas, which includes education, public health, livelihoods, climate justice, environment protection, arts and culture, minority rights, technology, and many more. Here's a list of some of the benefits that our fellows receive when doing the fellowship. As mentioned, the fellowship is fully funded. It includes a living stipend. The American India Foundation covers all visa and travel expenses. Fellows get health insurance and also an option to make use of mental health counseling. We provide language courses for our fellows, which is also interesting to note that the fellows are in all over India in different regions, and depending on the projects and depending on the placement where they are, different languages might be needed for a respective project, and then these languages can also be learned, and we provide such language trainings. We also offer mentoring programs. We have a senior fellow track also, which consists of seasoned professionals in India's development sector. And these experienced individuals also help our fellows when it comes to their projects, when it comes to orientation in India's development sector. In addition to that, we also couple our fellows with alumni from our alumni network that also can, provide first-hand insights into the projects and their own experiences as fellows in the past. And of course, our fellowship team, both in India and the US, is also there for regular check-ins and mentoring. There are several professional development opportunities. One of them is also mentioned further down, which is the Virtual Leadership Institute, which is implemented by our partners Atlas Core, which is a program where young future leaders from all over the world actually come together virtually for different workshops and projects that they work together on. And our fellows can also make use of grants to visit conferences in India. They can do site visits. They can visit each other at the different host organizations. And they are engaged in conferences that the program itself organizes and different skill building workshops as well. The alumni community is also very close to our heart. We recently also launched an alumni platform where fellows can actually seek guidance from the alumni. They can see where those alumni are nowadays, where they work on, and share their experiences with each other and get support. As mentioned, we have Jocelyn here today, so I will keep the testimonials short. There are just 2 slides with testimonials. One of them here, Erin, it's actually a co-fellow, was together with Jocelyn in the same cohort. She was serving in Rajasthan in Jaipur with an organization called EcoRep, quite an exciting project where she was working with rural women to design products out of waste materials. And in these upcycling projects, they covered actually both livelihood opportunities for women in these regions and then also an environmental aspect to it with the waste materials being utilized for these products. Maitreyi is from the 2017-18 batch, and she worked in education. And now I will talk a little bit about the application process. As mentioned in the beginning, our applications are now open and we are happy to receive your applications. You can also always reach out with any questions that you might have. I will share our email addresses later on. But some of the basic selection criteria for fellows to apply is that they are either US citizen or Indian citizen or permanent resident here in the United States. They must be between the ages of 21 and 35. And actually this broad age range is also important to us in so far as we see to it that our cohorts are a diverse group of people, and this also refers to age. In the current cohort, the youngest member is 21 and the oldest is 34, which is also great, for sharing experiences. And we actually make it a point to have this diversity in our cohort. The candidates need to have a bachelor's degree or another undergraduate degree by the time the program starts. And they must be eager to learn with host communities on the ground. The projects are very different. The placements are very different. Some fellows are in cities, others are in more rural areas. And they work closely with communities on the ground. Our candidates also must be committed to positive and sustainable change and the US-India bridge building aspect that I mentioned earlier. Sustainable change, also interesting in so far as the projects of our fellows also help our host organizations beyond the actual time of the 10 months fellowship period. So those projects are actually sustainable and will have an effect on these host organizations and host communities beyond the 10 months of the fellowship. A little bit about the structure. The applications are now open. So the first part of the application process is the written application, which is pretty straightforward. Part of it is also 3 essay questions, which are very brief. So essay might sound a bit daunting, but it's just 3 questions with a word count of 200 to 400. So it's quite brief. And what we look at in these essays and in the application overall is in how far our candidates are motivated to do this program, and how far are they aware of certain challenges, the cultural differences that they might be facing, how creative are they, and how far does their story kind of fit into this trajectory, So we are also asking them, why is it at this point in your life that you would like to do this fellowship, and why? The second stage of the application process is an interview, where we also get alumni on board typically, and sometimes also some of our donors join, or other staff members and friends and partners of the program. And the semi-finalists after this interview round will go into a matching round, which means that in a parallel fashion to us receiving applications from fellow candidates, we also receive project proposals every year from host organizations. With some host organizations, we have worked over the years, also over several fellowship years. Others are also added new every year. And so once we have identified the projects for a given fellowship year and the semi-finalists from the candidate pool, we start the so-called matching round, which means that the selected candidates and the selected host organizations get access to each other, to each other's profiles. And then based on their preferences and based on their interest, we facilitate meetings and interviews between them. So a selected candidate can meet up to 3 host organizations and let us know afterwards about their preferences. And then based on these preferences, the matching happens. So once you have entered that stage and you are selected as a fellow, in October is when our project or our fellowship starts with an orientation conference in Delhi. Throughout the fellowship period, there are professional development opportunities for our fellows, and we have 3 main conferences over the course of the fellowship program. There's continuous support through our senior fellows, through the fellowship team, and professional support at every step on the way. Our fellows work on the grassroots level. They learn a lot about the development sector, and they build great networks within the development sector in India, but also with the other fellows, with the host organizations and the host communities they serve. This is a very broad timeline of the fellowship. It starts in October with our orientation conference, where we have a lot of technical sessions, but also reflecting exercises and activities. Our fellows meet with alumni in person. They also meet with our US track fellows, meaning those fellows from India that actually serve in the United States. In the middle of the fellowship period, which is in February, we have another thematic conference, which is also called the Midpoint Conference, where our fellows reflect on their experiences so far, and we prepare them for the second half of the fellowship. And in the end, in July, we have a public seminar with typically also invited guests and keynote speakers, and we have a graduation ceremony for our fellows, where we celebrate their accomplishments, and where we also launch our fellowship publications. Each year we have a yearbook, a creative publication of our fellows. They present posters during this public seminar. So this is a celebration of the accomplishments of each cohort. And with that said, I would like to give over to Jocelyn. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for joining us today. Jocelyn graduated this year from the program, and she has compiled some photos from her fellowship experience here. And yeah, Jocelyn, maybe you want to talk a little bit about these beautiful pictures and about your experience overall. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jocelyn. I just recently completed my fellowship this past summer, and I will talk to you a little bit today about my experience, my background before, and where I'm at now. So prior to applying to the fellowship, I studied economics and sociology and then worked for a few years. And I knew before I continued professionally, I really wanted to have this fellowship opportunity. So when I applied, I was looking to get more field experience, more professional development, and really looking to expand my connections and my network with hopefully this like incredible group of people. So I can show you some of these photos, and I'll tell you a little bit about my experience in India this last year. So I was based in Hyderabad, and I was working with a microfinance organization. And so a lot of my work that I was doing was field work. And also working in the office in Hyderabad. So I was working on their strategic initiatives team for the company, and they were working on developing an application for the recipients of their loans. So these were women that were mostly in rural areas that were taking out small loans to develop their farming businesses. So throughout my time, I did field visits to 5 different states. Some of these were with other staff members, and some of these were on my own. So you can see in this bottom picture here in the center, this is when I did a field visit in Rajasthan with a coworker, and we were meeting with loan recipients just to get feedback on their experiences with the organization and the things that we can improve for them. And that's what's going on in the upper right-hand corner. So those were some of the most meaningful times in my fellowship, was getting to go out in the field and directly interact with staff in different locations and get to hear from the women themselves that were using the app and who were over time taking out these loans. And the top is I got to also attend a few conferences, and these were really great opportunities for me to get to connect with people from a variety of different backgrounds in the development sector in India. So in this photo, I'm with a few of my colleagues from my host organization, and we got to attend a tech summit in Mumbai for 4 days. It was a really great learning opportunity. And then in a couple of these other photos, these are with my co-fellows, with friends that I made and other coworkers. So this top one is from a Thanksgiving that we hosted in Hyderabad at my apartment. We brought together fellows from around the country and new friends in the city, and got to share, Thanksgiving with some folks for the first time. And this bottom photo here on the left is from one of our midpoint conference, where we got to come together and do a lot of reflecting on our fellowship experience so far and kind of readjust and set goals for the remaining time. And then this bottom right photo is I got to attend a good friend's wedding in his hometown, and that was a really special experience as well. So just like reflecting back on my fellowship, I think some of the highlights for me are, one, the relationships that I got to build with my coworkers, with my fellows, and with the AIS staff. I feel like they kind of made the experience for me. Throughout the fellowship, like, you are often, getting to work independently on a project, and that was really meaningful. But it was also very collaborative, both with my supervisors and those at my host site. So, you're always adjusting and trying to improve your project. And so it's a very collaborative process, getting input from the people I was working with my mentors, with my co-fellows, who really helped, I think, push me both professionally and personally to take on the challenges of the program. And then also the opportunities I had to travel and see more parts of the country, and get to have a lot of independence over the work that I was doing, and get to, really get my hands dirty and not just sit in the office for 8 months, 10 months. But my host organization really encouraged me to go out and have conversations with people, go out in the field and learn firsthand more about the microfinance and development sector in India. So those were kind of my 2 most, I think, meaningful takeaways from my experience. And now I just finished my first semester at the University of Chicago, where I'm pursuing a master's degree in public policy. So I feel really grateful that I had the fellowship experience I did before moving into this phase of my life. I feel like I was much more prepared for the challenges of this program that I'm in now. And I feel like I was also a much more competitive applicant to get into some of the programs that I did. And yeah, I think I'm able to get a lot more from this next phase of both my education and my professional life because of the experiences I had this last year as a fellow.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jocelyn. And you touched upon quite a lot of points that I also wanted to mention. You know, we had a recent alumni survey where a lot of our alumni also said those relationships that were built during the fellowship, and you know, we are talking about alumni from the past 22 years. They are still, you know, among their best friendships and their connections that still remain today with the co-fellows and also with the host communities and so on. So I think this is also something that is well reflected here in your pictures and in your report that you just gave. Also happy that you mentioned what you did after the fellowship. This is a question that also sometimes candidates ask. What do your fellows do after the fellowship experience? And you know, we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are in touch with our alumni, and there are a lot of amazing stories to be told. We have quite a lot of fellows that actually started their own organizations after the fellowship. Others started another degree, as Jocelyn did. A lot of fellows also stayed in India. Some of them are now hosting fellows on their own in their host organizations. So there are a lot of different stories that are yeah, exciting to tell. And yeah, we would also like to hear what our audience, what the questions are from our audience. I wanted to show our email addresses here also. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you might have. But now for the live session, you can also add your questions in the live chat, and then we are happy to address them. I saw a question about the application deadline. My colleague Isabel has already answered it. It's February 20th. So there's still plenty of time. And as I mentioned earlier, the application forms, we have changed them quite a bit this year, and it's pretty straightforward. Of course, you have to answer some questions. You have to provide some information about yourself. We have 3 short essay questions where we would like to get an idea about yourself, your story, your motivation, and also how you deal with certain challenges. To mention this maybe a creativity part question that we have in this year's application is that you are to imagine that you would survive an airplane crash and you are in an unknown area and you wander around and you encounter a community that speaks a different language. And the question would be, how would you deal with the situation? How would you approach the situation? And there's, of course, no right answer in that regard, but we would like to get a feeling of how creative our candidates are and how they deal with unknown situations. Because something that our alumni also tell us over and over again is that it is a challenging time, but it's also a time where you learn a lot, and it's yeah, really a life-changing experience. And I see Jocelyn nodding, so yeah, it seems like yeah, she can attest to that. Yeah. Speaking of challenges, Jocelyn, can you maybe talk a bit about such challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges that come, you know, in any work environment and being a new person in it. And then, you know, for a lot of us, it is an entirely new culture. And even for some of the, you know, fellows that are Indian themselves, they might be in a different state. And so still there are differences in language and culture that are going to come up. I think one thing that my fellowship experience taught me was to stay really adaptable and be just ready to pivot all the time. You know, you're with a host organization who has an idea of, you know, what you're coming in to help them with. You know, they have a clear project and a goal that you are coming to work in partnership with them on for the time of your fellowship. But, you know, especially in at the grassroots level and development sector. In India, like things are constantly changing, so you have to be ready to, work, in collaboration with your team to adapt as needed, to, problem solve, to adjust for the changes that come up. The needs of the organization are going to change. There might be problems with funding or timing or something. So I think it was a really good experience for me to have to learn how to pivot and develop stronger communication skills and be resourceful, to make sure that we were constantly on the same page and addressing these challenges as they arose. So I think that was one really good experience for me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I think something that I've also heard from a lot of our alumni is, especially in retrospect, when they look back and they remember that at the beginning or during the fellowship, some of them were getting a bit frustrated about not having enough impact, or that's at least what they thought. They had a certain idea of what the impact should look like, and how their project was supposed to develop. And then they kind of expected more, and it wasn't, going fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping in mind, first of all, that it's a 10 months program, so that is limited, first of all. And then the impact also shouldn't be underestimated, because just by the presence of the fellows and by the change element that is necessarily happening when a fellow joins a project and an organization is typically more than you would see it in that very moment. So oftentimes our alumni say in retrospect, they actually only realized how much of an impact their presence in their project had. And during the time, they were kind of getting a bit impatient about things moving a bit slower than expected.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I had an anecdote of that recently. I had so someone who was newly hired at my host organization reached out to me, and she was coming on, and as she was being introduced to the organization, they shared with her a lot of the reports that I had written, some research that I had done, and she had some questions relating to that work that she wanted to know if I would talk to her about. So I didn't expect that. It's been 6 months since I was there, but they're still using the work that I was doing very much, and as they're moving forward. So that's not something I'd expected, but it's nice to see that is being carried forward in a way I didn't know.
Yeah, nice. And also congratulations on the impact you have had, Jocelyn, which is amazing. I see there's a question from Courtney. Is previous experience studying or working in India or South Asia preferred? No, I mean, in the sense of in our interview, it's not a requirement that there's prior experience in India or South Asia. We might bring it up in an interview to also get a sense of prior experience, of course, and it doesn't hurt if someone has been in India before. Usually from our US fellows who go to India, typically around 50% of them have had previous experience in India, but it's not a requirement. It can help, of course. It definitely helps fellows to have a better idea of the context they will tap into. But again, it's not a requirement. It's also not preferred in that sense. What is preferred, of course, or I would call it a requirement, is that we get a sense that a candidate, whether this candidate has been in India before or not, but has a certain idea of cultural differences and the overall experience ahead. So that's something we look at. I hope this kind of answered your question, Courtney. If not, please don't hesitate to drop another question in the chat. Maybe I can also mention about the timeline, since it's a bit of an involved process. Jocelyn went through it. It takes several months. I mentioned the two-stage application process, the written application, the interview, then the matching process. So it takes actually several months. And then by May, our final candidates should be confirmed. Or actually rather towards June. So end of May, in June, they will be informed about being confirmed as a fellow. before the fellowship then starts in October.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that is one of the strengths of the application process, is that it is very thorough in the mutual matching portion of the application. I mean, that was one of the appeals of the program to me, is that I wanted to make sure if I was, investing this year of my life and doing this fellowship, that it was going to be something that, it was going to be a really good match for both my host organization and myself. And so I really appreciated the time and effort that went into making sure that like both parties were, familiar with each other, that knew the expectations and a little bit about their strengths and, what we were going to be able to offer each other. So that's something that made me feel a lot more confident about the work I was going to be doing, the host organization I was going to be with. And I think that was something that really makes the experience better for both the fellows and the host organizations.
Yeah, thank you. I see there's a question from Erica with regards to language skills. That's a good question. So it really depends on the respective project. So I mentioned we receive project proposals from our host organizations that are actually later on also together with the fellows adjusted. So this is only a first proposal. Then later during the fellowship or at the beginning of the fellowship, this will also in collaboration with the fellow be adjusted to a project that both sides agree on. And some of the projects require certain language skills, but not all of them. I mean, all of our fellows need to know English. That's one requirement. But then when it comes to Indian languages, it pretty much depends on the projects. In most of them, fellows are okay with just English. Sometimes we have projects where we need a certain language. Let's say it's a project in South India, and this project requires Tamil as a language skill. Then, of course, we can only consider candidates with this language skill for this very project. That oftentimes means that it is, we have a pool of fellows from India and the US. So oftentimes these projects would be covered by Indian fellows, but not necessarily. So since Erica mentions that Hindi is taught, so if it's a project where Hindi is required and we have a US candidate that has Hindi language skills, they can definitely be considered for this project. But again, it depends on the respective project if certain language skills beyond English are required or not. And same, by the way, since I also see it's about the level, whether intermediate or advanced, that again also depends on the project. We are, of course, also aware, I mentioned that we also offer language courses, which is nice to have and also helps our fellows to connect better with communities. However, we are also, of course, aware that having a language course over a few weeks and months wouldn't teach you or wouldn't make you necessarily fluent in the language. However, it's still a great benefit for our fellows when they work with communities on the ground, and they even if they can just communicate with a few phrases, it typically leads to much closer connections. How was it for you, Jocelyn, with language skills? Remind me, did you?
Yeah, so I was based in Hyderabad, but my host organization worked all over the country, and a lot of it was in the north. So I did take advantage of the language classes, and I was studying Hindi, and I felt like I did learn quite a lot through it. It was like one-on-one tutoring that I felt really helped push my abilities forward a lot. So I really appreciated that. So then later on, when I did do field visits in the northern states, I was able to understand more and communicate more with staff and women who didn't speak English. So that was really great. But I was doing field visits I was like traveling in 5 or 6 different states. So some states Hindi wasn't used very much, but there were times where it was very useful.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Even if some questions come up after this info session, you see our email addresses here. You can always reach out to us. We will also hold additional info sessions in January and February. The deadline is February 20th, so there's still some time to prepare for your application and to reach out to us with any questions you might have. So maybe let's wait another minute if other questions are coming in, and if not, I would say we can also wrap it up. Yeah, receiving a few thank you messages here. You're very welcome. We are very happy to have you here, and thank you for joining today. And special thanks to Jocelyn. I think it's always best for candidates to learn from someone who actually went through the program, and I'm very grateful for her sharing her experience today. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you all. And if anyone wants to reach out, I'd be happy to have a conversation one-on-one if anyone has more questions.
Thank you so much. I see there's a question if there will be a recording. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure, because with the last session that we had last week, that worked as well. On LinkedIn, via the same link that you used, you will, when you click on it after the session, you can actually see a video of this very session. And if that doesn't work, please reach out to me, then I will find another way, but I'm pretty sure this should work. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much again, everyone. It was a pleasure to meet, even only virtually, hopefully in person one day. And please help us spread the word, especially those fellowship advisors joining in today. Thank you very much for your support. And we look forward to confirming the cohort for the October 24 start next year. So thank you very much. Thanks, Jocelyn.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.